Yeah. Smiley face over there. So thank you everybody for coming. This has been a long time coming. Hey, Mandy. Various people have come from all over the place. There's my fam, the London fam. Where are the London fam? Oh, at the back, there they are. And my mate Len, who's come down from Manchester, and I think Tony's got the record because he's come from Southampton. And everybody else has made their little pilgrimage, probably from West Bridgford, but thank you all for being here. It's just so lovely to see everybody's faces. So I decided to sort of put this thing on, not just as a celebration of this book, what I wrote, but to sort of celebrate us all, really, because you're all my tapestry, you're my people, and with everybody in this room, including Claire coming up the stairs, and Laura. Come on in, get a glass. That's all right. Get a glass of fizz. Everybody in this room has played some part into getting me where I am today, and has been interwoven in my life. So my master plan is to say a little bit about how the book came about in the broader context of my life, and talk a little bit about it, and hopefully, if you're not all glazed over, I'll read a bit, and then we'll just have a party. So how it all came about. You probably all know that my spiritual life has become the big aspect of my life in recent years. That started when I began meditating about 17 years ago. And I found that I was quite able to slip between the thoughts into a more expanded space beyond that. And it was like a homecoming, because it reminded me of when I was a child, when that part of me was really prominent and big, and I just knew there was something else, some other bigger, wider space, a kind of knowing place. But there was no reflection of that in my world, and there just seemed to be no place for it. So I just kind of shut it down and lived a life in very narrow confines, really, just to stay safe and protect that sensitivity, I suppose, that didn't seem to have a place for it in life. So when I started meditating and I had this sort of like homecoming, I then became really quite obsessed or compelled to sort of expand that, explore that, and live my life more in line with that part of myself. And so that began a healing journey. So when I was a kid, some of you will remember this because you've been here from day one, from when I was a kid. And also, that's better, isn't it? And also friends from school, family, you've been there all along. And you'll remember maybe that I'm going to tell a couple of stories, and they're like where I was in terms of my ability to own this part of myself and to be able to speak up for it and advocate for it. So when I was about 8, and you may remember being in Mr. Glave's class, and he came in one day. He used to play the guitar, and everybody was captivated by his guitar playing, and he came in and told us that we were going to all learn to play the guitar. And of course the whole class was all very excited because this was all very new, except this one girl who was just filled with horror at the prospect of having to do something outside of the train tracks that she felt safe in. So I didn't learn the guitar, I just sat on the side while everybody else learnt it. And same again when it came to cycling proficiency. Anything that was outside of the norm I just found terrifying. So I didn't do the cycling proficiency, I just sat on the side and watched like everybody else. Which is why, Mrs. Merritt, I don't go cycling with you. I know you think it's because I'm unfit, but it's not. It's because I haven't got a cycling proficiency certificate. So they won't let me. They won't let me go. They won't let me go. There's a shame about not having a cycling proficiency certificate. Anyway, so I was a bit sort of crippled really by this super sensitivity and inability to find out how to be in life. So of course then when I started meditating and I was back in this space, and you realise when you start meditating and you're in this more expanded area, you can kind of look down on your system really and see how it works, and you can see your patterning, you can see the stories that you tell yourself, you can see your wounds, and if you're brave enough, you can feel into those and look into those. Ah, hello, come in. That's all right. Come on in. Grab a drink. And from this perspective, in my meditations, I could see all the sort of limitations and all the things that stopped me being able to be who I really was. And one of those main ones was an inability to speak and to express myself and to stand up for who I really was. So I sort of set off on a healing journey, really. By the time I was 16, you have a picture of me as a child, and I think my Uncle Dave can probably remember me being that child. But by the time I was 16, we were met with our O levels, and I was kind of okay with those because I was quite swotty and academic, and I could keep my head down and stay in my train tracks. And we had to do English language, and we did English literature, and then I don't know if you remember, we had this kind of left field sort of curveball exam came in right at the last minute, which was called Spoken English. And there seemed to be no preparation for this. And there was just nothing in that word, Spoken English, in that title that did anything other than fill me with abject horror. I could think of no way this was going to go well. But I turned up at the language labs. Do you remember the old French language labs at the comp? And I was given a sheet of laminated paper, and the instruction from the examiner was to read it with feeling. So something in me just sort of shriveled at that point. And I can remember I had to read the story about, it was a guy who was walking on a tightrope. And something in me knew I had to put expression and build up the tension and the suspense in this, and it just wasn't happening. I was trying my best, trying to talk to the woman over here, and it just shriveled away. The final sentences just went into this sort of tumbleweed moment of cringe. But I thought, well, I've done it, that's it, I tried. But then there were 2 other parts to this test, as if that weren't enough. So we then had to sit with one student over here, one over there, like miles away, and have a conversation where she suggested we project our voices. And projection just wasn't in my skill set at all. So I just cringed through that, mumbled a few things. And then the final horror was I had to sit opposite the examiner and have a one-to-one conversation with them. And I think possibly the trauma of that I just blanked it out. Anyway, so I'm telling you this because it gives you a sort of marker in the sand for where I was at 16. So Julie, the little brown envelope came through the letterbox with the exam results in, as it did in those days. And I opened it, and inside was the long white slip with all the results on. Very good, 9 O levels, all grade A's and B's, swotty kid, that was all very good. And then I looked over this side, and there was a column that had the English results. So I had English language, very good, English literature, very good, and then spoken English, and there was a grade at the side which I didn't recognise. And that wasn't an A or a B, wasn't a C or a D, wasn't even an E. And I thought the lowest one was an F, so I thought it'll be an F. It wasn't even an F. So what was on the bottom was a U, a great big U. And I didn't know what this meant. So I turned the paper over where it gave you all the details of what all the grades meant. It said, "You're fantastic. One day you're going to write a book and talk about it." That's what it said. So I looked at this U, and of course, unclassified. And so that just shows you where I was at the age of 16. My ability to express myself didn't even meet the most basic metric for the London University Examining Board of 1980. So there we go. So this was the thread that I then became on a mission, amongst many other limiting factors, but this was just one of them that kept coming around for healing, this ability to be able to stand up and speak for what I believe in. And when you've healed a lot of the baggage from this life, your vibration rises and you become more in line with your soul frequency. And when that happens, you start connecting with other incarnations that have the same soul frequency of yours, with which you share some soul material, for want of a better word, which would commonly be called a past life. So I started encountering these past lives, and when you heal something in a past life, you heal it in the past life, and it unlocks the same thing that is in your current life. So I visited many of these, about 35 different lives, healing various of my issues. And they just kind of unlocked something, and I just became freer and freer as these past lives were healed. And that is how I came across Heron, because I visited that life maybe in about 2018, I think. So maybe 7 years ago was the first time I went to visit it. And this girl, Heron, was about 10 years old, and she was highly sensitive, and she was mute. And the astute among you will spot the similarity between the girl in the past life and Janice at Westbridge Recount. And I visited that life several times, maybe 4 or 5 times, so I knew the big important things in that life, and every time it happened, it unlocked something in me, in Janice's life, so I was just grateful for that, really. The first time I saw her, she was kneeling down. I just remember it being really hot, and these little knees were sticking out from under a dress on the sand, and I'm in her weaving my hands backwards and forwards, and that was my first experience of this girl. And yeah, let me just have another room. Yeah, so I feel like I got to know her over the years. And although I've only got a really sketchy understanding of like biblical stories, because I just come from a very secular background, there was no religion in my life at all, I just called it the biblical life because it felt as though I was around biblical type people. So I called it this biblical life. And again, didn't think too much more of it. It all happened a long time ago. Until about a year ago, when I sat down on my meditation chair one morning and I was asked if I was ready to write a book, and I was taken back to that life. I must have said yes, because I was then just plummeted back into this life, walking through a marketplace this time, being this girl held by her mother's hand, and just relived that experience, and I just started writing it down. I just kept getting to say what you see, say what you see, so I just kept writing it all down. So it was like an experience that I transcribed. Bit alarming, can't lie. Sent it straight to Ruby, like, what do you think of this? What do you think is going on? I'm Philippa. I don't know, where's Philippa? Oh, and sent it to Philippa, who was my other angel on the arm, my other wing, my wingman. And I thought, well, that's that. And then I came down the next morning, and for the next 50 days consecutively, I just downloaded episode after episode after episode after episode of this girl's life, and also the life of a boy called Asaph. So he and she had led parallel lives in the same sort of time frame. They crossed paths only once, and when they crossed paths, it was really powerful for both of them, and it really, their meeting underpinned the rest of their lives and their parallel journey. They were both separately, but both entwined with events around the crucifixion. So all this is in the book. Like all good fables, it's kind of it comes back to today with a spiritual message. So it speaks about the story of Heron and Asaph. Really is about the how living in an imbalanced patriarchal world, which is what we live in now, as we did then, how having that imbalance causes suffering to women. We all know about the subjugation of women, burning women at the stake, that kind of thing. But we'll perhaps say a little bit less about how men suffer under the patriarchy, where they are, largely reduced to cannon fodder and robbed of their innate tenderness that they're not allowed to own. So it speaks about that imbalance and how today the feminine energies are rising and things are coming back into balance. So it's sort of encouraging us to connect to Mother Earth, being the most sacred feminine, and as she's our connection to the earth, and how that can lead us out of this crisis, really, that we're in, this planetary crisis of today. So that's kind of it, how it came about and a bit about it. I know some people have read it, and if not all of it, then at least part of it. So shout out if there are any questions or comments, and if not, I'll read a bit if that's okay. Right, okay.
Yes, please.
I shall read. Yes, please do. Oh, if only I could find a book. Which one? We'll go for this one. I think we go for this one. Okay. So this is from chapter 7, I believe, if I can find it. Okay. Right. So by this point, you've already been introduced to Heron and what she's like as a child, and how she's this sort of ethereal child connected upwards to the cosmos and down to the earth, through the earth energies, which indeed we all are, but Heron is just super sensitive to this, and she can navigate these energies up and down, which are sort of responsible for divine creation, really. So that's already been explained and introduced. For me, this whole book actually is quite sacred for me. And I find I can't read it without getting taken into those energies and the light from that time. So I'm going to invite you maybe to just lower your gaze or close your eyes if you feel so inclined. You feel okay with that? And then as I read it, just invite you to listen more, perhaps with your heart, as well as your ears and your head. And then you can perhaps just stay in stillness for a little while after that. Because this is the time, this episode is my on-ramp into Heron's life. This is the first time I came across her. And it's also the first time that she meets Yeshua. So it goes like this. Heron could see the camels in the distance, big hooves patting the sand. They were approaching. A man sat on a camel in front of her, still some distance away. As she watched, her heart was tight in her chest. A group of people, adults, nomads, travellers roaming the desert. They were strangers, not from here. As she looked at the man, some strange pain asphyxiated her heart, a panic almost. She could barely breathe. It was too much for her, and she turned and began to walk quickly back home. She felt the man's eyes glued onto her back, piercing her heart. They were not going to let go. She ran into the house, dimly lit from a small window, and sat on the floor against the wall, biting her lip, body stiffening, anxious. Who was this? Who was the stranger looking at her? She wanted to hide and dropped her face into her bended knees and let out some silent inner screech. Time passed, and the sun beckoned her outside to her favourite place. She knelt in the dust and sand. Her brown knees protruded from the bottom of her white tunic. She looked at them, considered them. She liked their symmetry, a comfort somehow to see her body. It kept her steady. As she relaxed, she moved her fingers in the sand, back and forth, left to right, in unbroken, curling patterns. The sand was so sun-baked and dry, and the grains so smooth running that it almost took on the properties of a liquid, as her fingers wove rhythmic, hypnotic patterns before her eyes. It calmed her, it soothed her. She kept her eyes down, and her fingers moved back and forth, back and forth. Suddenly, her heart was gripped again in alarm, the same asphyxia as before, and she sensed a figure standing to her left. Dazzling light seemed to emanate from it, a form full of pulsating light of a frequency she could barely tolerate. She knew it was the stranger on the camel. Her eyes widened, and her gaze clung to the patterns in the sand. If she ignored him, he might go away. In her peripheral vision, she could see his feet, sun-browned beneath a long white robe. He just stood. No words were exchanged, but he said, "Come with me." He did not move. She nervously continued weaving her pattern in the sand, as if to say she were busy. Without words, she declined. She must stay here. That was the expectation, the arrangement with her mother, and she was obedient. She must stay, it was the way of things, and her gaze stayed low, and the man of light just stood, understanding. Her heart contorted in his light. She winced and lowered her head further, as if against some shifting pain within. She exhaled and twisted, and the pain passed. "Follow me," said the man again, wordlessly. Anxiety began to rise in her again, but in spite of its hold, she knew beyond doubt that now she would follow this man. He was not dangerous. She didn't know what he was, but she knew that she would follow him. The agreement was silently sealed. The man started to move away, and with her head still lowered, she walked a few paces behind him, out of her familiar home in some kind of hypnotic trance, magnetized in awe. His light obliterated everything else. It didn't matter where she was going or how long it would take. It was just happening. Da, da, da. So that was a bit of the book. Oh, Rich has go. Hello. Just in time. So that's it. I'm going to wrap up there. I'm going to say a few thank yous to people because there are a few special people who've helped me. I mean, you've all helped me, but I mean, particularly with the book, the last 6 months or so, without which I would have crumbled, really. First, I'm going to thank Mr. Harps over there, Andy Harper, my son-in-law to be, who has stood by me through all my tech neuroses, and he has helped me with everything tech creative. He's set up the website. He's also done a collaboration with me on a guided meditation that we've done together. So Andy is an audiovisual artist and general top egg. And so he's created this beautiful soundscape, binaural frequencies that sort of interact with your brainwaves and take people into deep states of relaxation. And over the top of that, we've overlaid a guided meditation, which I was given, which takes you deep into the heart of Mother Earth, because until you're safe in the feminine, you can't heal. So then that gives people the opportunity for their own wisdom to come through, for their own healing. So Andy, great bows of thanks to you. The other, he's made it just in the nick of time. Dr. Rich over here. He's just come for the glory. So Rich and I started meditating together in that porter cabin 17 years ago when it all began. And Rich is far more qualified than I am in matters of literacy. And so I asked him if he would, yes, don't deny it, yes, I asked him if he would proofread the manuscript. So by the time it got to Rich, it had already gone through a professional copy editing service at the publishers. My mum, grammar pedant extraordinaire over there, had gone through it and had found a few handfuls of mistakes. I'd gone through it, found a few more. So by the time it came to Rich, I just said to him, I said, "Oh, Rich," I said, we've gone through it. I think it's fine. There's nothing. I said, don't take it too seriously. Just read it like you'd normally read a book. And if anything jumps out, just let me know. Thankfully, Rich took his task far more seriously. And he came back to and so when he turned up back at my house with this manuscript, there were about 35 post-it notes in it for all these various bloopers. So I am eternally grateful for his dedication, and not just with the book, but just generally being there over the last 17 years as our paths have interwoven. So thank you. Philippa, my queen, Ruby and Zoe, you were the three who, when it first started happening, I started sending all these downloads to, just like, oh my God, I was just like emailing it all out. It was because my own psychic space was so full and clogged up with all this stuff. It was just invaluable to be able to give it to somebody to kind of ground it and bring it into being. Otherwise, I'd have just been totally overwhelmed. And part of me didn't want to stop this experience, but at the same time, it had to kind of go somewhere. So it went to Hill, it went to Zoe, and it went to Ruby, who were just so supportive, and not just in the book, but in everything. You know. So I think that's probably about it. Ed and Grace. Grace is in charge of the little card machine, so if anybody does want to buy the book, over there, never too early to start thinking about Christmas presents. Mates rates, 12 quid for one night only. So they're over there. And I think that's probably it.
Wow, that was absolutely amazing. That was amazing. Incredible. That like that is so powerful. That was yeah. Pick something which is so like, I don't know, you can pick apart which sounds better, but it's not. Yeah.